shift within the industry. So, without further ado, grab your shoulder pads, grab your helmet, and walk 8 miles with your boy and peep this out.
Let's talk about how the industry has changed. Money used to be long. Performers, singers, rappers lived lavish lifestyles, partying with Diddy, having a good old funky time. And you see this on your TV back in the day, and wish you too could be a part of that. Back in the day, the major artists made a lot more money from their music. The music industry had a lot more control back in the days of physicals, when the public valued music. However, after physical sales crashed in the 2000s, the music business hasn't been the same. There were lots of layoffs, which is still happening to this day. Some artists faded into obscurity, as entire teams and departments at the labels were downsized or completely obliterated.
And here we go.
A lot of artists started going independent. When they started seeing how artists was being treated by the labels and how the record labels was single-handedly, underhandedly under the table, making deals, screwing people over, then they just decided to go their own way independently.
By the wayside. That's why Dirty Diddy ventured into television, because the music wasn't selling. The glory days of the 90s were over. His record label Bad Boy wasn't as poppin'. It was no longer a hit factory. Biggie passed, and who didn't pass was in prison. That's why he joined the Making the Band as an executive producer. Not because he gives a damn about artists, but he knew people would watch. And at that time, reality TV was at its peak. So for Diddy, it was an opportunity for a different stream of income because the industry is going downhill. So he made Danny D. Kane to only destroy them in the end after he made his money, allegedly. Also, I was today's years old finding out he tried to revive Making the Band in 2021, where he would have his sons be the judges. For obvious reason, that didn't happen.
All of your favorite artists are finito and finished. I don't think none of these people are making any coin from the music business.
Now, despite reports that sales for music revenue has increased due to streaming, artists are still not making money from it.
And the way social media has taken off and created avenues for individuals to have a podcast show, doing podcasts and so forth, that has really, really taken off. But again, you see the dynamic shift within the music industry of how the music industry was back in the 80s and the 90s versus where they are now. It's almost like it's not worth the juice to squeeze. Because now we look at the artists that are coming out. What are they really talking about? You got different artists talking about the same damn thing. But when you take a look at the artists that were back in the 90s and the 80s that were hot, they were talking about something. They had something to talk about. They had that conscious rap. And I believe the record labels are really the ones to blame, because when you are an artist and you sign to a record label and you don't know the business, they take advantage of that. But then look at the artists that they're grooming to fit what society says you should look like, sound like, move like, if that makes sense.
And here we go.
Out here when it comes to money being made from streaming. So you can only imagine how much smaller acts make from their streams, as everyone from these platforms are getting paid from the same pool. But more on Beyonce in a bit. With how little streaming makes, no wonder why labels have to prioritize certain artists more than others. Because if most major acts' albums are barely going platinum, why even make an album anymore? That's why people don't make albums and just rather release singles and EPs guarantees. It already costs a lot to make music. Now, does it have to? Not really, but in the industry with multiple mouths to feed, everyone has to be included. That's what makes it an industry. The money is just not coming in like it used to. That's why labels are forcing their artists to sign 360 deals. So labels are now getting a piece of everything, causing artists to make less money.
So I have to go in the studio, I got to book studio time, and you may not get a song the first session. So now I got to keep doing that, and that's money. And then I have to hire an engineer, and that's money. And I got to feed everybody, that's money. And then when I make the song, I have to finish it. That's money. Some more studio sessions. Now I've brought in another producer. Now I got to pay that producer, pay this producer. We got to negotiate. So now that's lawyers, that's money. And now I got to mix it. That's money per song. Now that's 14 songs on this album. The last album was 19. So, let's say, and I posted something like this on my page and people argue with me about it. So studios typically for a 12-hour block is $1,200. Then the session engineer is $75 to $100 an hour. So just add that up.
Money stays in-house. When money stays in-house, it's more to go around versus more money going out.
So let's just say 250 plus 120. Now you're already at 300,000. That eliminates 75% of the people who are aspiring. I didn't realize how much money that it takes to actually be an artist. This is before you market. This is before you shoot a video. This is before you do an appearance. And now also I'm a female.
Are these things that you learned when you launched your own label, or was this already on your radar?
So this is all stuff that I realized in real time as I was launching Supergiant.
Now, this part doesn't only apply to musicians, but celebrities in general. But
let me just stop right there before he continues on. She's spot on, actually. She is spot on. And this is why you really have to think about what you're doing. A lot of these artists that you see now, you think they rolling like that, they got it like that? Hell no. A lot of that shit is rented. And a lot of the jewelry is not what you think it is.
And here we go.
Back when the money was moneying and people placed a lot more value and prestige on celebrity, you couldn't tell them nothing because the value of fame was so high back then. A lot of them thought their shit could make tasty patty. Around the internet boom and YouTube getting popular like say 2007, you wouldn't catch a lot of these celebrities on YouTube, mainly for actors and some musicians compared for their reason being on YouTube then to now, meaning back then they would just stick to music-related content like music videos, interviews, or touring, or behind the scenes. Twitter did open some celebrities up to social media where they would try to be regular, but YouTube, you wouldn't catch them on YouTube in that state at all. YouTube was for regular people. Celebrities turned their noses down on the internet because there wasn't any money in it, or it was just too cheap. By the way, the internet in general is cheap compared to traditional media like television, billboards, magazine spreads, print. But now, because the money in the industry is drying up, we are now seeing artists starting cooking channels, doing mukbangs, doing storylines. Look at Will Smith, one of Hollywood's biggest names. Like, he's really just a glorified social media influencer now. T-Pain, the poppin' rapper from the 2000s, he's now just a streamer, ranting and raving like myself. We are seeing these streamers blowing up to the point where rappers rather go on their platforms for interviews and promotion runs instead of the respectable publication. Rapper Nicki Minaj, she went on Kai Cenat's streams to promote her last album. Also Offset and 21 Savage went on Kai's stream as well. Tyla as well, and Ice Spice, who I'll talk a bit more further in the video. Even the boring comedian Kevin Hart is invading the streamer space.
Social media just really just kaboom. Just bust through the doors. Live streaming, reaction videos, whether it's on YouTube, Kick, Rumble, all these different platforms. You see? And you still have some people that will pay to see them in concert and to see them in shows. So that's a good thing too. Another good thing is international. When you're doing, when you go international as an artist and you're doing things in other countries, you're going to make bank. That's why a large number of artists, not every, but a large number of artists, they take their talents overseas.
And here we go.
Meaning a song will debut at number 1, then fall out of the top 10 the following week. And these are major songs, great songs. But songs don't peak at number 1 consistently as they once did. Yes, and a song by pop singer Ariana Grande had a huge release, debuting at number 1 on the Hot 100 back in January, but it only spent 1 week atop the chart. And yes, the song went platinum, but normally an Ariana Grande number 1 sells more than that. And it was certified in June, a number 1 song. So songs are also taking a longer time to go platinum. Ariana had another song that peaked at number 1 for 2 weeks, We Can't Be Friends. Megan Thee Stallion's Hiss spent only 1 week atop the Hot 100, one of the biggest diss tracks of the year. Kanye's Carnival spent 1 week atop the chart. Beyonce's Texas Hold'em summited for 2 weeks only. Taylor Swift, the biggest artist in the world, her song Fortnite also did just 2 weeks. Sabrina Carpenter, this year's rising star, stayed at number 1 for 1 week with her song Please Please Please. Grand opening, grand closing. What I'm also realizing in today's music scene is that artist relevance isn't lasting either, and it's because of streaming. Number 1, streaming is easily manipulated. Physicals as well, but not to the high degree like streaming. Back in the day on release date, an artist, some of them, would buy their own records to give it away in a, celebration type of way.
But not to do. And you got to have that basic knowledge, so you know what you're up against. Live streaming is spot on right now. A lot of artists are not making that type of money like they once did back in the 90s and the 80s, but really the 90s and the early 2000s. I would say up until 2005. And you look at where we are at now. Pretty soon, record labels are going to have to shift gears if they're not already in the processing of shifting gears so that they can keep up with what's going on. If an artist is not relevant, if an artist is not always in somebody's ear, guess what? Gone. Somebody else going to take your spot. Somebody else that's new, that's hot, going to take that spot. There's always an artist taking that number 1 spot.
And here we go.
With streams, apparently streams can be bought to make an artist appear bigger than he actually is. Back in July, No Jumper reported that Megan Thee Stallion had 3 million streams removed from her last album by Spotify due to suspicious bot behavior detection. That sent Nicki Minaj and Tory Lanez online minions into a feeding frenzy. And it's not just Megan. There's a lot more major artists that have been accused of faking their streams. Kanye West, Don Toliver, and Travis Scott, who was recently crying because he thought he had a 11,000 copies lead on Sabrina Carpenter for the number 1 album. But in a turn of events, Sabrina claimed the number 1 spot, causing him to run over to Billboard, accusing them of not counting 1,000+ copies. That would have given him the number 1 album. Now, he did all of that for his album to decline 97% on the Billboard 200 chart in its second week, earning him the biggest decline in this decade. So yeah, should have kept your mouth shut, Travis. Streaming has really damaged the music business reputation in my opinion because it is so easily manipulated by anyone it appears. Ice Spice's career is tied to streams and impressions. That's what make her seem like a superstar. Also, TikTok played a huge part in her success. So when Universal Music took their music off the platform earlier this year, Ice was affected. Yeah, she signed to 10K projects, but Ice also has a deal with Capitol Records. And Capitol is owned by Universal. I know, complicated. Also, Ice's 40 million monthly listeners got cut in half in a year. And at the time of making this video, the rapper currently has 17 million monthly listeners on the platform. Stans and fans love to go on about who has the most monthly listeners on Spotify, but it doesn't mean anything. Currently, Celine Dion has about 1 million more monthly listeners than Ice Spice. Does that mean they are comparable? There was also a time when Ice had more more monthly listeners than the Beatles. And as I mentioned earlier, they aren't making money from their streams. 9 months ago, the hip-hop legend Snoop Dogg said he was paid fewer than $45,000 for 1 billion streams. And we could go deeper into the stream shits.
Fuck it, I might as well have Beats endorse me. I might as well get an endorsement contract. So that way I can, when I do my music video, I got Beats in my video. So now I get an endorsement check from Beats. So I can make money on that back end. Then you smart, you can do more talk, you can do more talking points. You know, let me go talk to the kids. I'm gonna do some motivational speaking somewhere, so I can get paid from doing that. When you run this thing like a business and you look at it from every angle, it's all going to connect.
And here we go.
Artists are releasing deluxe editions like a day after the standard edition in an attempt to drive sales, which is kind of crazy because back in the olden days, we only got a deluxe if an album sold 1 million. Then we would get the platinum edition, or if it's like a 1-year anniversary. Because of how bad the artist economy is right now, music is becoming a headache, resulting in a lot of re-releases. And 3:15:20 by Childish Gambino, that was...
So with that being said, learn the game, learn the business, learn your outs and your ins. You see the shift within the music industry, and you see where it's going. Don't lose sight of where things are going. Stay in the loop.
Caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the crossfire.